This week's episode of Modern Art Family Tree is brought to you by the Foster Gallery. The Foster Gallery is a gallery in Worcester, Massachusetts, who specializes in paintings, drawings, and prints. Find them at www.thefostergallery.com. Hi everybody, this is Matt Foster, and this is the latest episode of Modern Art Family Tree, joined again by my mainstay partner in crime, Dennis Hart. How's it going?
How could I, how could I not be flattered by that introduction?
Now you got to remember, you're like the longest running personality on this podcast channel now. You really are. So now that's not saying much since it's only been up for a couple months, but still, we got to keep the show going. That's what I mean.
Yeah, well, I'm having fun doing it.
That was good. So today we're going to have a little less, actually maybe a little more fun, because we're going to be talking about Renoir, who I think I'll come right out of the gate and say I'm not a huge fan of Renoir. He's definitely popular.
Well, probably more so within a particular generation or crowd, but yeah.
I mean, he definitely makes it. And we were joking last time about Monet being on all the calendars. Renoir's definitely that guy that still makes it on all the calendars and stuff. But we'll get into it. But I mean, he's just I don't know. For me, I'm not super crazy about him. And then people say, well, why do you hate? What? And again, I don't want people to think I hate him. Like, it's not like I detest him or anything. But at the same time, he's not the guy I gravitate to, I guess, would be the way I would say it.
Right. I mean, I think the way I would put it for myself, too, because my sentiment is very similar to yours, is that it's just nothing to pull me to him above anything else or above most else.
Well, do you think that that's because we're, and I mean, maybe I'm trying to rationalize something that doesn't need rationalizing, but, part of me goes, well, maybe I just am not pulled to it because he was very much of that time and that kind of brushstroke and that kind of that. But and things have happened since then that more excite me. But at the same time, I don't think that's true, because there's plenty of work from that era that I totally go nuts for.
Right. It's not, everybody has their sort of uniqueness, and he has the uniqueness which separates him from all the other impressionists.
Very true.
And what that uniqueness is that very soft, I like to refer to it as cotton candy look, and it just doesn't do a lot for me, and I have a feeling that you sort of see that the same way.
I do. I mean, I like that term, cotton candy. I've never used that myself, but soft I definitely have used. Is that there seems like he's almost now. Some of this is true and some of it's not. There are periods in his life where there are paintings that have literally no hard edges in them. And it frustrates me. It kind of bothers me because I want definition. I want, it's not ephemeral. It's not because he's still making solid people and solid shapes, but there's no actual shadow line where the shape ends.
Well, so is it like you don't like ambiguity, or is it just you don't like...
No, and I don't think that's true, because I love ambiguity. I mean, if I'm one of these people that most people I know would say, well, de Kooning is ambiguous. You know what I mean? A very ambiguous, right? I mean...
Just a little.
Yeah, no, but I'm just saying, like if we were trying to pick out examples of someone who's ambiguous, and I very much like that, but there's a quality to de Kooning that has these very sharp, dynamic strokes.
Well, this is what I'm digging for right now with you. It's like, well, what is it about not having hard edges that troubles you? And I mean, it may be the same for me too, but if we can hone in on what that is, we might have an explanation for people.
Yeah, well, you know what? Let's hit the work, and maybe as we talk through it, we'll figure it out. I mean, and this is where we get to tell everybody we did not prep this show, right? We just kind of, these are the images, and we're just going to go through them. And I think you're right. I think as we talk about them, I'll probably have a better idea as why I have a again, I hate to use something as definite as distaste, because it's not like if someone showed me a Renoir, I'm sitting there going, oh my God, I can't even look at it. but at the same time, it just doesn't turn me on for any good reason, you know?
Well, we should also point out that, like every artist, of course, has a story, has a life that
Yeah.
that somewhat dictates where they go and what they do, and he's no different. Um, but what is his story? I mean, I know, like I said to you before, I know he was at times so poor that he couldn't even afford to buy his own paints.
Right.
So that obviously, played a role in his.
Well, I
And
know
another
that.
thing I think I read, it might have even been on a reliable source, Wikipedia, that he worked for a porcelain shop
Yes.
and was used to paint. He got asked to paint the little, designs on the china or whatever. And so that's like something that probably, you know, pointed him in the direction of painting.
I would imagine, and I know that one thing that struck me when I was kind of reading up prepping was that he moved around a lot, and he did eventually move to Normandy, which of course is kind of the cradle of Impressionism as far as where Monet and all those guys were really getting going with it.
Well, did he study under Sisley or somebody? What was his relationship with?
I thought he was just friends with Cicely.
Really? Okay.
I could
There's
be
a lot
wrong.
it comes up a lot. That's why I asked.
I think that they were friends.
Oh.
Because I know that, like in other things that I've seen, Renoir was definitely one of those guys that ran around town and would be, and his paintings dictate this too, is that he was definitely that guy that was at a lot of like lunch parties and was a very social person. It seems like he was not your brooding recluse artist who stayed in the basement and just painted. He seemed to be the guy that ran all over town and would put up these canvases and try and paint the real deal. But he was definitely interested in people. That's one thing that we can definitely define about him, is that unlike Monet, who was really he did figures, but he was truly kind of a landscape painter.
Well, he evolved to that, I would say, yeah.
I don't see that in Renoir. I see Renoir as a person who loved the figure, maybe in landscape, but he really did like having the figure a lot.
Well, I see him. I'd take it even a step further and say I see him as a figurative painter first, or even a portrait artist. I mean, it just seems like that's.
I can see that, yeah.
That just seems more what he was. I mean, maybe it was again the need to earn some money that encouraged him to do so much portrait work, but it just ends up being that all of his work, the most famous of his pieces, are somewhat portraits, whether they're portraits technically or not. There's enough information about the people that he's painting that you could almost call them all portraits.
Yes, yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, even his group paintings, I've seen where people pointed out, well, this is that person, this is that person.
Right. I mean, there's enough information about facial information, and it just seems like there's a story to them, even if they are just a scene.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, anyways, you want to rip into one?
Sure, let's rip into one.
Let's this is what you say when you're not a fan of the guy. Let's rip into one. So the first one I'm bringing up is the one that looks like a luncheon at a boating scene, and they're on this little, it looks like a man-made island. Now, I really don't know any of the stories and stuff about Renoir. I do know that he did chum around a lot with the other painters like Monet and those guys. And I know that we've seen this scene in other painters before. As far as the boats and the dock and this little island, island thing, this man-made island thing before. This is not the only painting I've ever seen this in. So I would assume that this was kind of like a popular, I don't want to say party spot, but hangout place for people at the time,
Well,
the
it's probably
sailboats.
events. It was probably where they held certain events. This looks like a wedding, right? There's a woman with a white dress and a guy with a black top hat and everything next to her, and they look like they're being photographed. Or I may be wrong, but I have a feeling this is some event, and it must be a place where they have events, and therefore painters and people who wanted to record certain events would obviously be there at various times.
Now I will say this is a earlier painting for him, right? And I actually like this painting more than most of his paintings. But there's a part of me that goes, I think I like the painting because it's more like a Monet painting than it is a Renoir. If someone were to tell me, put a gun to my head and said, identify a Renoir, this would not be the first painting I would gravitate to.
Yeah, I mean, nor I. I mean, to me, it's everything you've seen already in other impressionist pieces, right?
Right,
It's nice. It's nice. It's less specifically Renoir. I mean,
Yes.
if you didn't tell me it was Renoir, I would probably not even know. I would not even guess it was Renoir.
Right.
But there's nothing in here that I would say, oh, that's a bit unusual. That's something I haven't seen impressionists do before.
Right. I mean,
So
the only piece that I would say is Renoir-ish, if we're going to use such a awesome term. That sounds like a critique, like slam. You are so Renoir-ish. Anyways, so the only Renoir-ish piece would be maybe the tree line in the background, which is very like light and airy and kind of fluffy. Yeah, but again, that could have been that way for a number of painters. That's not so Renoir-ish that I would assume this was a Renoir paint.
Well, and in that situation, I think that softness, it's off in the distance. It needs
Right.
to read so far away that the lack of edge is actually going to help.
Yeah, but
And
but
so-
now this is where I get like jerk criticizing the guy, because that kind of bothers me now, because that softness is not the same kind of application as the painting in the foreground. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like I kind of would have, I don't know. This is just me being like a nerd now, But so you got this soft piece of the painting that's applied totally differently than the water and the boats in the foreground. So I guess you could make the claim that he's making space based on the difference in brush stroke and stuff. I mean,
Right.
there's also a color difference.
That doesn't bother me so much. I think that is sort of probably a fairly common thing in painting, to have the
It's just a
background
choice,
or the things off in the distance be treated vastly different than those things in the foreground. And
Fair
I mean,
enough.
part of that has to do with, like you said, the size of the brush, right? To make that so ambiguous back there, you'd probably use a very small brush, even though you think that you want smaller brushes for more detail in the areas that you're going to include more detail. I think in this situation, he probably did a lot of that work with a smaller brush, and that therefore it has a different look and everything than the information in the foreground.
Well, I will say I do love the middle ground of this painting. Like,
That's where it's all happening.
Yeah, I mean, the action going on in the middle ground is very, very nice, and I also will say that I like the boats as far as like the color choices and stuff. I think that they're very nice. So I mean, again, this is where I'll take it back as far as I'm not dissing the painting by saying that the fluffiness in the background. There's definitely parts of the painting I like, and like I said at the very beginning, I actually like this painting of his better than most of his paintings.
Well, and the other part of this that I think we should both be clear about is that we would never deny the talent of the guy. And,
No.
he's certainly
No.
well adept and knows what he's doing. Is very, very conscious of light and shadow and creating form and three dimensionality, and it's all
Yes.
it's all very, very well done.
Yeah,
It's just a matter of
clearly I mean, he was a avid like studier and prolific painter. He did thousands of paintings. I mean, he did a lot. No one can deny how many paintings the guy did. He was very, very active. So and you're right. He was a very good painter. I definitely would never pretend that he was not talented. That would be horribly untrue.
Well, I just want to make sure we get that out there, because
Yeah.
that's not our qualm with him. We're
No.
not saying he's a fraud.
No, right, yeah, that's right. Yeah, the guy couldn't paint. Really? The guy
He's
couldn't
just a
paint?
poser.
Are you sure?
How
So
did this ever get into the salon?
yeah, I know. Yeah, exactly. This guy was crap. So I wanna bring up the portrait that he did that I have in there, and I really kind of put this in as an early piece just to show, and we don't have to talk about it at length because it's very unindicative of it, not indicative of his normal style. But this was a very early portraiture of his.
Well,
Go ahead.
if you look closely, I think you can see pieces of his style later to come out, right? Like just the way that there's some light and not as obvious, but some sort of soft brushstroke overlaying itself just to create that sort of grayish background.
Yeah.
You know, everything looks much flatter because the softness has become very subdued, or I shouldn't say has become, because this is before it ever became soft. So it's just much more subdued. I think he got more bold with that idea and pushed it as he got, more into it.
I still see the softness, like in his treatment of like the buttons and the wrinkles in his vest and stuff. But I kind of brought this up more to show the point that Renoir was obviously influenced by Courbet. I mean, this has definitely some linear, especially in the face. This has some color and linear pieces that are very Courbet looking to me.
Well, Rubens too was one.
And Rubens, yep.
Rubens, and I think that's what I see more in this one.
I could agree with that. I mean, I think I gravitated to the Courbet because of the hair and the way that even, but the eyes are very like Ruben-esque, and I can see where you're coming from with that. Yeah. So anyways, we don't have to ponder on this too much because I don't think this is if someone walked up in a museum to this, they probably would not guess it was a Renoir.
No, nor would I have the first one. But I think everything else we're going to talk about would be undoubtedly.
It all goes downhill from here, folks. People are going to totally go away from this podcast and go, "Wow, those guys really hate Renoir."
And that's not necessarily true. I think the word I used when we talked about him earlier was, I'm just a bit ambivalent towards him. I just don't have a love or a hate for him. He's just there, Somebody we had studying art history, so we know his work. He's somebody you walk into a bookstore and you're bound to see a calendar or a book about him, a tabletop book about him sitting there.
There's definitely an art historian out there who's going to see this and go, pound their fist and go, "Really? You didn't give him his day?" I mean, because I'm sure he's very important to people, but just not to me.
Well, and truth be told, what I've read about him as a person, I think was a good guy. I mean, it's so easy to find people that you have some kind of, do something despicable, or you might love their work, but their personality was not so great. And I haven't found anything negative about him.
No,
I mean there wasn't, but I haven't found it. So
that
just means I haven't read a whole lot about him. But still, the point is that he could be a really great guy. It's just we're not in love with his work.
Right.
And an art history person who was really like who did their PhD or dissertation on Renoir might be saying, you guys just really didn't even dig into what was behind it, and what brought him to do the things he did the way he did them, and whatever. There's probably that story somewhere, but the fact of the matter is we're talking about this straight from the perspective of what we see when we walk into a museum and see one of his paintings, or wherever we see something of his. This is what the gut feeling we first get, and that's really all we're talking about.
That really is what we're talking about. Is his influence on us as painters, and what we see as quality in the work, and what we see as things that kind of trouble us. I mean, but it is what it is, So let's bring up the lunch scene, which is actually I think we're going to have some good back and forth on this, because this one really does clearly show the Renoir-ish painting style.
Mm-hmm.
It also shows his interest in crowds and people, and he definitely was educated, because he definitely positions these things well and works with the crowd placement and stuff really well, I think. And then, but this is more of your classic Renoir kind of motif, if you ask me.
Yeah.
So you want to talk about this a little bit?
Oh, I mean, there's two sides of what maybe I would comment on. I mean, there's certainly he's very effective in giving us the type of day, the time of year.
Yep.
You know, that's not that's nothing. That's a big feat, you know. I mean, really, to be able to pull this off and with such nice light, with that canopy, the sort of light being able to come through that canopy, the way that light is coming through that canopy, the greenery out on the outer edges of where they're sitting on that deck or whatever it is. Um,
Yeah.
the things that are happening, you know, the woman at the front table with the dog, um, the conversations, the facial expressions. I mean, as far as interesting painting, as far as um, you know, just compositionally and all that, it's all great.
Yeah. It's this is so bad. This is just how we talk about Renoir, isn't it? Yeah, it looks B plus.
It's all great, but you know, then you look at the way the greenery is down outside of that, and you can kind of see a nice little sailboat out on the water, right? But
Yeah.
that's your softness that you're talking about, and it's impressionism, so you know we have to accept that, but that's very specific to Renoir, I think. You know,
Well,
I don't.
yeah, I think one of the things that I think of a Renoir, and this is going away from the paint application part and more into maybe the social part of it. You know what I mean? The reading through the paint into the scene is like there's no politics in this. It seems like to me, like there's no. Every one of them could literally be talking about nothing.
Right, and that doesn't bother me so much. It does seem to me to lean towards you know. I doubt any of these people here are you know peasants, right? I mean that
Right.
it does give you the sense of maybe a slightly more high class afternoon in the summertime.
Yep.
Um, and again, I don't know the story behind the painting. Was he commissioned to do it? Was it just something he wanted to do? I don't know. It almost you know, somebody will slap me for saying this, maybe even Matt.
Yeah.
But it kind of makes me think of something you'd see, and maybe this is less effective, maybe not, but like what was this done? Probably 1870s, maybe.
Something like that. Yeah.
I'm thinking like Norman Rockwell in France in the 1870s, you know?
Yeah. No, I mean, I won't slap you for that because I kind of feel the same way about it. Is that it's a nice, this is one of those ones where you know how you show someone a Courbet or you show someone a whatever, and they say, well, that's a nice picture, and you go, what? Like that is not a nice picture. It's got this and it's got this and it's got this. And, you know what I mean? Like
like nice is a negative.
Well, right. But I mean, you know how people go, like it's like you're showing it to your mom and she goes, oh, well, that's very pretty. And you kind of go, what? Like that is not
pretty here.
Yeah, pretty is not what I was looking for. But this picture kind of gives me that feeling like, oh, it's a pretty picture, like that's and I think as we're talking through these paintings, that's part of my thing with Renoir, is a lot of them end up being, I don't know what it's about. It's a pretty picture, nicely done, but that's about it,
I think you're right. I mean, the events that he documents are not events that have a meaning other than it was a pleasant afternoon in the summer, right? I mean, this could be somebody's, wedding anniversary. It could be a wedding itself. I don't even know. It doesn't look like it because guys don't even have sleeves on their t-shirts, right? You don't see that at weddings very often, but
I mean, my impression would be this was like after the end of the workday, or like a Sunday type thing where people
I see Sunday. Yeah, I see Sunday because there's more to it than just grabbing a drink after work, right? This doesn't look like that. Plus, they're dressed a certain way. Like the women are in their Sunday's best, and the men are.
The men are actually wildly mixed as far as costume goes.
Yeah. Well, maybe they were wearing, maybe they came from church and they had to take off their nice shirts because they wanted to get some sun and they wanted to, you know, get the women going with those muscles. I don't know.
Yeah, that's that. You know what? You just went somewhere with this painting that I wasn't expecting. Yeah. Maybe this was a bro. Now all I can picture is these two guys with the tank tops trying to outflex each other, like it's a showdown between the two dudes with the hats on.
He's the guy with the guy leaning on the rail is just about to say, "You see that sailboat over?"
Yeah. That's right. That's right. That's hilarious.
But the point I'm trying to make is simply that, like, you see something like this, and if it were titled, the celebration after, the battle of this, or something that was saying something happened in the world that was substantial, and then these
Right.
people got together and were celebrating, it would have something more to it. But I don't believe there's anything like that here. I think it's
But
just.
but this also goes with the philosophy of this is why it's on calendars is that people buy this to put in their and I mean again I'm not trying to demean it, it's just is what it is that's why it's on hot pads and it's on calendars in your mom's kitchen and stuff like that, because there's nothing in it that they just think of it as a nice, you know, what's the old term, tall glass of water, right? Like it's just something nice to look at, and they don't have to think about which emperor was murdered to make this scene and all that stuff, you know.
Well, and I sort of wonder if that really is to meet as deep as it goes. It's a nice.
I think so. I really do.
I mean, I want to believe that there's more to it than that, but there's nothing. There's nothing telling me otherwise.
I think that's the art, you know, that's the painters in us, is that we're seeking something that has some big historical significance, and it just doesn't. I mean, the historical significance was this was the middle class of the time getting together for lunch.
It looks like there's a date down in the lower corner, and it looks like it might even be 1892, but it could be 1882. But I'm guessing now that it's not in the 1870s at all. It's even
Well,
later.
hold on, I'll tell you. It's according to the thing, it's 1880 to 1881.
Okay.
So mid career for him. So let's pull up the couple dancing, which kind of fits with this one, right?
Yeah, it's a similar feel, right? Because it's a pretty picture. It's a happy time. I think that's what he was interested in capturing, was social happiness.
Yep.
And maybe there's a reason for that. You know, maybe in his world it was the other way around. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I really don't know. And I mean, this is where we're being unfair to him, because
Right, well, that's
maybe
why
there was some big motive.
That's why I'm digging here, because I feel like, that a lot of times artists are either showing you their world or the world they wish they were a part of. You know what I
Right.
mean? And
Well, I do know that he liked to be around people and it's obvious in his paintings. He was a social person, but I don't know that he was like a partier, to say like we would know of a partier today. He may just very much like being in with people and stuff, you know, and recording that.
You mean you haven't read stories about people having to carry him home because he was so drunk that he couldn't get himself back by?
Is that a story?
No.
Oh! I thought you were
don't
like
think that
diving into something
exists.
that I didn't know. You know?
I don't think that story exists. That's what I'm saying. I mean, you haven't heard it, right?
No,
Probably
no.
never have.
I mean, he's definitely not the guy that, you know, stabbed a guy over a piece of bread or something like that. I don't know of anything like that with him, outside of like what you said, where I know that there was a time where him and Monet were painting together, and they literally were, you know, down to their last paint, and they didn't know what they were going to do. I know of those kind of stories, but I don't know anything socially where he was, you know, in a fight, and you know, or anything like that. But let's go to the painting part of this a little bit, because this painting is a good example of what bothers me about the Renoirs, which is the guy's suit almost feels like it's blurring into the background.
Yeah, there's not much definition in there. There's enough to say that his legs aren't flat, right? That his legs are
Right.
round, that coat hangs down in front of his belly, which is not flat. But in terms of there being the right type of wrinkle or
But we're getting into this like kids book softness.
yeah, actually that's a good way to
Like
put.
this was almost an image for a 5-year-old story, you know. And that I don't know. I mean, maybe it's me just being critical for no good reason,
Well,
but that doesn't excite me.
it goes back to my Rockwell comment. I mean, maybe that's it. Maybe his work is just so much
Picturesque.
illustration
Yeah.
that it's like and it's never it wasn't illustration because what defines an illustration is, you know, it's done to solve a problem. You know, it's done based on either some story that's already written or
Right.
you know, and it's somebody else's direction, right? And this
I was
is
gonna say it's commercial at nature. Yeah.
right, and this is probably not that at all. This is probably his direction, his own direction. So,
Yeah.
I mean, it couldn't be defined as illustration. It just sort of appears like illustration.
Yeah. Now peeling back from my distaste, going more into my acknowledgement that he's still a good painter, is that the formation of the figures, the motion implied is very good. Their placement in space seems pretty good. I don't like the hat. The hat bothers the crap out of me. Because it looks like it's at the wrong angle for the guy's head.
Oh yeah, like it's a bit turned down over his eye, right?
And I mean, I know you could make the case, well, maybe it was on him cockeyed or something, but it looks a combination of misplaced and too flat to me. But right as I say that, the guy's face is actually kind of well painted, if you ask me. Like the way he does what's left of the guy's head looks good to me.
Right.
And then you know, I like the woman in this painting, to be honest with you. I like how she's formed. I like how his hand feels like it really is holding her up against him. There are pieces that are nice. And in general, the use of the space is nice. But I think it's the attack of the form that bothers me about him in general.
Well, yeah, and that's all. That's the main theme here, right?
Yeah.
It's that softness. It's that you know, as you said, lack of edges. There's nice light coming back through those trees back there, but again, you can't quite really make out what's happening with them because they're too soft. I don't really see leaves. I just see
Right.
right.
It bothers me. Like the trunks of the trees. I just feel like they're wallpaper.
You know what this is? It's like a very detailed stuffed sculpture.
Yeah. It's a red groom's.
The trees are made out of cloth stuffed with cotton or whatever. You know.
That's actually kind of funny because doesn't it feel like, I don't know if you know red grooms, but do you remember those
Yeah,
pieces?
I do.
That
Yeah.
They were like soft city bus, and it was like a bus made out of pillows and stuff.
But that's what I'm referring to. Soft sculpture. You know, it's like these things that people sew together and.
It kind of has that feeling. That table feels like if you ran into it, it wouldn't hurt.
Right.
You know?
But on the flip side, to kind of give him some props like you were doing, I mean, the facial expression is great, right?
Yep.
The dancer's facial expression, the guy right beyond her red hat, scarf thing, whatever that is,
Yep.
he's having a good time. There's no question about it. And he's so far away and his face is so little,
Yeah.
at least on my screen.
Yeah. No, but you're right. Yeah.
It's like to get that, to have that kind of, you know, with that little bit of work that he did to be able to carry through that facial expression, I think it's a feat. You know, it's
Yeah.
a good. It's a.
Yeah.
What,
Well, and not that this is what spawned it, but you said feet. I actually like the feet in this too. I like the placement of the feet. The angle of the ground. The feet feel like they're actually on that angle of the ground.
yeah, this is true. That even hers, that you can only see the tip of her toe, right? Because it's so right next to his feet.
But it still works.
Yeah.
So,
Well, no,
I mean,
I feel-
and this is more credit to him being a good painter. He's a good painter.
Yeah.
These problems that you have to solve in painting, he executes well. It's just that some of the stylistic choices I'm not crazy about.
Right, and that's just you can't love everybody.
Exactly. There you go.
Not everything is
I think
for
you just
everybody,
nailed
and
it.
there are people out there that think that his uniqueness is just amazing, and nobody's done that, and nobody's
Right.
done it. Well, yeah, there were a few other painters I could say that were along this line. Most of them weren't men, though. That's the funny thing too. Is
Yeah.
it has a very feminine. Uh, Not that you can judge a painter.
No, but I know what you mean. I know what you mean.
I mean, you really. It's something that I actually spent some time thinking about and looking at when I was in college. Even I may have had this conversation with Marcia Lloyd.
Oh yeah.
That you can sort of tell sometimes by looking at a painting. Why is that? Like what's different about the way a man paints versus the way a woman paints? We've had that
I'm
conversation.
actually envisioning Marcia Lloyd's reaction to that.
So,
Probably
I know,
not
so I was
good.
probably talking more than I should have at that point in time, but it's just interesting to me because you can go to the Museum of Fine Arts and get your fill of a lot of this time period.
Yeah.
I'm thinking like Bertha Morisot or Mary Cassatt.
Yep.
I mean, those painters have a bit of a different, a different look.
Well, they do embellish the softness, and they well, and I would say not even as much as this though, but the other thing is that there's and you're right. There's language that you hope doesn't offend, but a maternal instinct kind of thing to some of the pictures.
It's
And
not that it's good or bad. I'm not saying men are great painters and women, well.
No, not that. I meant the subject matters that some of the women painted were
Yeah.
very women-centric as far as mother with children and things like that.
Yeah.
That, like, I'm thinking of Mary Cassatt in particular, who did a lot of subjects that, and Mary Cassatt kind of falls in that category. I definitely respect her as a painter, but it's not anything I'm going out and buying a poster of. But she picked a lot of subject matters that had a feminine feel to them.
Yeah, and I would even argue that I gravitate to her work more than Renoir's.
Oh, me too. Totally. Yeah.
So there's
Yeah.
something to be said for that. But he does have. I just think it has a bit of a feminine look to it. It's not that I'm saying that's a bad. I don't want to come off as saying if it's feminine, then Dennis doesn't like feminine painters, and that's not really what I'm saying. It.
Oh, it's pretty obvious that you're a raging sexist.
That wouldn't be the first time I was accused of that.
Yeah. Well, hey, let's speaking of feminine paintings, let's move to the girl with the watering can,
That's a good one.
which is probably one of his more famous ones, if you ask me.
Yeah, and it looks very, very portrait-like, right? I mean, it's somebody must have commissioned him for this one.
Well, this is a 1870s painting, and it's I don't know. This is soft in a different way. This almost kind of teeters on being a different kind of a Renoir type painting, because like the hair treatment is almost like you're not even sure what it's made of. I mean, it's using your cotton candy analogy. It's almost like cotton candy that's been like disseminated and blurred out.
Yeah, you're right. The hair is very, very, very non-defined, but at the same time, there seems to be some implied curliness there,
Yeah.
but you just can't tell how curly or how. There's something in there. I mean, I would love to be in front of the actual painting now instead of in front of my computer screen, because there's some kind of mark that he included in it, which I think does say he was trying to do something with the curls, but it's so faint and it's so ambiguous that you can't be sure. And again, where the hair ends and the grass begins behind her, it's almost unclear.
They feel like the same object, just different colors.
Yeah, you're right.
So I mean, but this is a yet another example, and we're kind of saying some of the same things over and over again, which is this is loosely defined edges, but he still creates space. I guess is the piece that's worth noting, right?
But the space is different than some of these other ones, and it's there's less of it. I mean,
Yes,
it's
yeah.
flatter.
It is flatter than the one we just saw. Yeah. definitely.
more ambiguous. I mean, we can tell there's grass behind her with a flower bed beyond that, right? I mean, and that's something that maybe more our left brain is telling us than our right? Because we just
Well, is this one of those pieces or instances that the structure of the things is creating the space more than the actual portrayal of the things?
right, the use of color and the treatment of the paint are not what's creating that dimension. I don't think.
It's the edge of the path, and then it's the where the flowers pick up as part of a bed, and then how her body cuts that up. I think it's the structure of the paint, the painting, that creates the space, not so much how he applied it and everything, you know. But anyways, well-known painting. I mean, things I'm attracted to in the painting are things like the flowers she's holding, the color of her dress, which is a very I like that piece of this is the way that is a it's almost like hearkening to Blue Boy a little bit, where like the striking color of the dress being where it is in the painting kind of has this aura feel, you know what I mean, to the painting. And I do like that. I'm drawn to that idea, and I think that was probably just an educated choice to do that. But again, this is where, even though I'm not a fan in general of some things, I can definitely appreciate the masterful execution in others, you know. The choices are good. So I do like, I mean, even though this is half of what we were complaining about, I do like how he made those flowers up in the top left and the bed, the whole garden piece up in the top. And then also this little piece of work going on down on the bottom left. I like how he does the plant life is very appealing, and it's very typical impressionist. I mean,
yeah, it actually, for what he's doing. I mean, but here's where I'm gonna draw a division. I mean, there's like a rose bush in the foreground that you just mentioned.
Yep.
And the leaves of that rose bush are kind of clear in shape and
sharp marks
and light and shadow. Yeah, I mean that's kind of a different treatment than everywhere else, right? And then sure, it's the foreground, so it needs to be a bit more in focus. But it's interesting that he's like, he goes the other direction so quickly.
Yeah. Well, and I would say all the flowers are treated that way, just with different color tones, because the back has the same feel. It's just not as sharply defined. Not the color
and I'm more accepting of that. I'm definitely more accepting of that for that, because again, that blurriness is natural to create that space.
Right.
But her, she's so non-defined versus that bush, and she's standing right next to it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, that's fair enough. Yeah. Yep. So that's the girl with the watering can.
Yeah.
So let's pull up the last one here that we'll talk about. We had to do a nude because he did quite a few nudes.
Yeah.
And now, is this one of his more popular nudes?
I'd say so. Yeah, I see this often.
Okay. Now, I actually don't mind this one. I have seen others that I really can't stand because they're so fluffy cotton candy, like you said.
Right, where it doesn't even look like flesh. It looks like cloth, right?
Yeah, and the other thing that I don't like about some of his nudes is that they are just pink shades from head to toe.
Yeah, that's a good point. His flesh tones can be a little bit uncomfortable sometimes, right?
But this one doesn't have that problem.
Not really, no.
This one has a wide variance of colors in it.
And the light's very nice. I mean, just picking up the bits of light coming through the leaves that she's in. I mean, I think that adds excitement to it.
Yeah. So, but he definitely pulls off in all of his nudes that I know of. He definitely pulls off a very, very Rubens kind of woman.
Yeah. Yep,
which is this voluptuous kind of, like a little on the heavy side, but it's kind of the, what the guys are digging, right? And then he always portrays, well, he typically portrays them, like I said, much more fleshy, much more pinks and that kind of stuff. This one's a little, like we said, more on the earthy kind of look, you know what I mean, as far as the flesh tones go.
I mean, in the shadows, there's some nice, cooler, bluer tones, and
Yep.
Then there's some browner, warmer shadows in places, and there's even the sort of purpley. In places, there's some like purpley skin, but it all looks like skin.
Right. And I actually like the treatment of the face and the hair and stuff on this one. I actually like this one better than most of his.
Well, the hair is I think is better than most of his.
Yeah, well, I like the eyes. I like a lot of his eyes, for whatever reason, they get overly defined in his other paint. It's almost like when he gets to the face, he works harder, and then he kind of lets it go as it comes out, right?
Right. That's a kind of a typical portrait thing, right? Faces and hands get more attention than everything else.
It is, and I think one of the things I do like about this is that the face kind of gets the treatment that the rest of the body gets.
Right. Maybe not quite as vague as the greenery behind her, where the blue.
Right. Oh yeah, right.
If you look at the image on, this probably just the way it was shot.
But if you compared this to even the image we just saw, the hair is at least treated the same way as the face.
Yeah. Yeah, and the ambiguity of the face and all that there, I think it's fine, because I like that. I like to let my eye do some of the work, and implication is good.
No, I like that too. I definitely like that too. So, what else can we say about this? I mean, I think that some of his other figures, the area around the figure is more defined than this one. This one is especially loose.
Right. Yeah.
The wooded area that she's in, or whatever this environment is that she's supposed to be in, is definitely looser than most of his. Usually they're more of like a bather scene, and the surrounding scene is treated more detailed.
Well, look at she's got some kind of cloth, right? She's got her left hand is sort of grabbing it, right? You can see the thumb disappear underneath it.
Yeah.
And it kind of fades around the back of her hip there, and it turns into the greenery in the background.
Right.
You can't even see where it ends and where the leaves or whatever begin. So it is very ambiguous. But the only thing I can define here is, well, there's a difference between the cloth, because I can tell that that's some kind of cloth, and then there's maybe some kind of grass. Like what is that in the lower right?
Yeah, I assumed that was either because she's not gonna be sitting on water, obviously, but I mean, yeah, no, I think it's grass, and I think that over to the right of her head, there's the clear indication of like a branch.
Yeah, that's. But other than that, I couldn't tell you whether that is supposed to be water behind her, or if that's just supposed to be some kind of bluish like tree.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just this. No matter what, I mean, I squint and I try to get a spatial shift, and I'm not quite getting it, and I don't need it so much, but I don't feel like it ruins the painting, but it would be nice to know, oh yeah,
where she is.
There's something 10 feet behind her, or there's something 100 feet behind her. I can't really tell.
Yeah.
It almost looks like she's like, part of it. She's stuck to whatever, it's like it's draped over her, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Whatever the background is, all these trees, and I'm not sure.
Yeah. She's definitely not in a train station. I mean, she's definitely in the woods.
It's not a man-made space.
No, she's definitely in the woods, but I'm with you. I can't figure it out.
I don't care what kind of definition you give me. I just want to see the distance. That's all.
For this kind of painting, yes.
Yeah, that's all I'm asking Mr. Renoir to give me.
Yeah. Come on, Renoir. So, all right. Well, I think we threw this in just to be more the atypical. It's not atypical, so I guess that's not fair. But
he's
a nude that we liked of his, and he did lots of nudes.
He's somebody that you're gonna see when you go to a museum. He's somebody that comes up all the time.
Yep.
We would be remiss to not.
Oh yeah.
Not spend a half hour on them, but you can't love everybody, like we said.
We've blown past that. We're almost at an hour, just so you know. So which to his credit, so we could even talk about him for an hour. You know what I mean? hey, those guys spent an hour, so they didn't shellac Renoir and then move on.
He got his due.
Yeah, that's right. No, but I mean, and in justification that I feel like this whole episode we've kind of gone back and forth of why we don't like him, but why we respect him. So we've definitely painted the right picture of Renoir. But at the same time, I want to make out make sure that people are clear that he fits now in what we're talking about because of his relationship with Monet. He's clearly in that genre of like the core demographic of impressionists, and he fits well into that impressionist.
He does, and really nowhere else. That's the thing. You can't put him anywhere else. Some people overlap this or that, like we talked about with Lautrec being, kind of a hodgepodge of this or that.
Yeah.
But him, I can't put him anywhere else.
No, he totally fits as an impressionist, and he's one of those guys. He helps define impressionism. So, so good. I mean, any last words on Renoir outside of what we've already beaten to death, which is we respect him, but we're not into him.
I have absolutely nothing else.
Yeah. That actually is perfect, right? I have nothing else about Renoir.
I am all Renoir out.
Yeah, we are done with Renoir. Okay, well that sounds good. So we're not turning bitter. This is just Renoir for us, right?
That's right.
So all right, good. Well, until next time. Thanks a lot, Dennis.
Thank you.
All right, I'll talk to you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.